Jackie, Matt, Alex, welcome to the Mother Jones podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jackie, it's been 6 months this week, 6 months since you guys lost 17 members of your community. It's a rough place to start, but I want to ask, does it feel like 6 months?
Sometimes it feels like it was yesterday, and sometimes it feels like it was a decade ago. People always ask me to talk about that day, but honestly, I don't really like to anymore, just because there's no benefit out of continuously telling that story, because people know that story already. I've told that story time and time again, and so we just need to focus on moving forward and the positives that came out of it, because unfortunately, tragedy in this country is the catalyst for change.
I was in the audience watching you in DC March for Our Lives rally, and I recall something that was really touching that you said, which was,
"We share the stage today and forever with those who have always stared down the barrel of a gun." This issue is undoubtedly an epidemic that affects communities of all classes, an epidemic that the Center for Disease Control does not have the funds to research.
and there was kind of inbuilt in your speech a sort of promise that this movement would embrace all walks of life. Mm-hmm. Do you think you've been successful so far?
Oh, yeah. I mean, on our road to change, we have a tour bus of about 24 students, and more students come from minority communities than from Parkland. I'm not one to talk about everyday shootings. I've only experienced gun violence one day in my life, and although that's going to stay with me forever, you know, Alex, when he goes home, he's not going to feel comfortable walking the streets when I will. And so the only person to talk about that everyday violence is him and his friends. I'm not one to talk about that because it's not my story. It's not my narrative to tell. And when we travel around to these communities, we meet so many different groups, like similar to Alex's Peace Warriors. And so they're doing amazing work in their communities, and we're here to uplift their organizations as well, because they're doing the same work we are, and they just don't get enough media coverage.
Yeah, so I got together with them before March.
Oh, you got together before March for Our Lives.
About 2 weeks after the shooting, him along with about 6 others from Chicago came down to Parkland, and we hung out and we met there.
Alex and his fellow Brave/Peace Warrior group of students really helped us. They were like our first real sense of therapy in all this, with them teaching us their nonviolent methods, how they deal with their day-to-day trauma. Jackie says this all the time, that Jackie deals with post-traumatic stress disorder, but Alex and our friends from Chicago deal with current traumatic stress disorder. And so it is a different experience, and there's different methods used to deal with them. So Alex was in Parkland 2 weeks after the shooting, and really broke down his methods of training and violence intervention, and those lessons, I mean, we still use what we learned that day today.
We see different obstacles every day, and as an activist, it has increased my patience being on the tour. It's opened, giving me more of a voice, because where I'm from, in the past, I usually was quiet because every time I talked, I was told not to. You know, it's hard when you get told every time, when you speak up about things that you're uncomfortable with. It's just like, oh, you don't know any better, or that's just you being a kid. You need to stand a child's place. But being a part of this tour, it built me up a lot, and these people, my new family has built me up a lot. We build each other day by day, and I'm just thankful for that. I've seen more life on this tour than I've seen in my own community, and it's sad that has to happen. It's really messed up that we have to be doing this right now.
Yeah, I always take the time to look around me sometimes, and I'm honestly in awe, because our bus should not exist at the end of the day. And so it's amazing that we came together, even though our similarity, if there's one, it's pain, and it's trauma, and it's violence. And they empathize with me, because we get sympathy all the time, but it's another thing to empathize with another person, because they truly get what you're going through.
And not a single day goes by when we don't hear another story of tragedy and loss. It doesn't matter if we're in Albuquerque, New Mexico, or Bismarck, North Dakota, or Dallas, Texas. Every single place we go, someone has a story of gun violence, of losing a loved one, an innocent life taken. Most days are very emotional. They're very heavy, and I'm not going to lie. It gets to all of us. Like I cry almost every day that we're hearing these stories, but I also laugh every single day with these wackos. It's just, I mean, you have to, because we understand that the work we're putting in, while it is exhausting, it's the most important work we could be doing, because we are actively saving lives. We're actively working to create a new America, that this is not a norm, because we've accepted this for way too long.
Let's get on the bus with you. Give me the highlights of the tour so far, Matt. Maybe you. How many cities, how many events? Give us the lowdown.
We started June 15th in Chicago, and we have done, I want to say, like 60 cities.
Over.
Oh my God.
Easily over.
It's incredibly, it's 80 cities.
There you go.
Okay, so I'll backtrack. So on this tour, we've done about 80 cities, all across the country. We initially, when we scheduled and planned the tour out, we did it like with a map. We just grabbed a ruler and we were like, okay, how far can we actually legally travel in a day with a bus driver? What's the most places we could go? And we had like 8 or 9 scheduled days off while we were on the tour, and we have not had a single day off while we were traveling on the tour, because we filled every day with town halls, community events, voter registration parties, things like that nature, youth meetups, meeting with impacted families, because we learned as we went on from place to place that every single place is affected by this. You cannot escape this issue. The only people that are escaping this issue are refusing to talk about it. And I mean, I've had elected officials tell me that, oh, this isn't a problem in my area. And I showed them a news article from like a week ago or 2 weeks ago of someone being shot and killed in their district, or someone being shot and killed that day in their district. I could go down a list of each day, and every single day has a highlight. From the Chicago Peace March, where we marched down the streets of the south side of Chicago, to music, to the Black Eyed Peas, to Jennifer Hudson.
Chance the Rapper
So
was there.
I mean, we were dancing with Jennifer Hudson, like
on the supposedly most dangerous streets in Chicago.
And we'd see people in apartment buildings look down, squint their eyes, and be like, oh, I gotta join this. And they'd come down with us, and then they'd put their arm around me, they'd put their arm around Jackie and Alex, and we'd be marching. We were so sweaty. We marched like 4 miles, and it was crazy. And like, that was the first day.
And on that first day, listing the names of victims, I remember seeing on the 147.
And you could see on the paper that they wrote 147.
This was just this year up into mid-June, right? The number of young people that had been shot and killed in Chicago.
A moment that really got to me was when they held up the sign that said 147 killed, and you could see that they had written 146, and they changed the 6 to a 7. And because someone was killed that morning that was under the age of 10. And they talk about it because you need to keep talking about it. You need to continue to share these stories, because there are people out there who are isolated, that are in their echo chambers, that believe that this is some kind of polarizing issue, when in America it is not. This is not a polarizing issue. When we are confronted by the opposition and speak about it, we all agree on what must be done. It doesn't matter how attacking these people are. When we actually break down that this policy would work, they wholeheartedly agree.
Well, let's talk about the polarization, because obviously at these events you were met with counter-protesters, people who had organized themselves into showing up, and
they're not that organized.
That organized?
No.
Tell me about that.
I mean, in Greensboro, we had a few thousand people show up for our event, and their congressman organized the counter-protest, and there's 8 people at their counter-protest. And then when I went over there, 5 of them agreed with all of our policies. So,
So what are they protesting?
They think that we are anti-Second Amendment or we're trying to take their guns away. And a lot of the times when they're willing to speak to us, they understand that that's not the case. And it's funny because when you look at the crowd of counter-protesters and compare that with the crowd that we bring, you can clearly see that ours is diverse and full of different people from different ages, ethnicities, religions, backgrounds, and they are quite literally carbon copies of each other. And so
I thought it was a family once.
Yeah.
And then-
Yeah. And so when they bring their ARs to a rally in the middle of Houston and they scream and yell at us, that's not going to do anything. They're not even making a point. They're just expressing anger and hatred. But when people like Matt and our friend Ramon and David go over to them and talk to them, Matt ends up agreeing with a person with 3 guns on their person and a knife. Mm-hmm. And the media just doesn't want to show that because they want to continue this narrative of polarization because they want this side and those extremisms to continue because the reality is most people are in the center. But politicians benefit off of this polarization.
Multiple people across the nation agree with almost everything that we're saying. And it's weird that we even talk about counter protesters and even said the name counter protesters because, like Matt said, almost 8 out of 10 of them agree with us as well. So it's like if you actually sit and have a conversation with us, you agree with us. You believe in everything that we believe in.
I wear a shirt when I talk to the counter protesters. It says saving your kids from gun violence. Because even the people who show up and think that we're not actually about this for the right reasons, or the people who think that we're about things that we're not about, or that people are trying to intimidate us, I'm fighting for them too. I'm fighting for their kids. I'm trying to fight to make sure that their kids can grow up and not worry about a lockdown drill, that their kids don't come back from school and ask their parents why they had to hide under their desk and be quiet for 10 minutes in the day instead of learning about math or science or art. I'm doing this because I want that to be in the past. I want people to learn about that as a reason why a way that this country overcame corruption.
One thing that came to mind is, when you say that you're a pro-Second Amendment organization, what does that actually mean? Do you think people believe that? Would it be easier to just get rid of the Second Amendment? Does it come from a place of belief or strategy? Is I guess my question.
So, I come from a family of ex-military law enforcement. All my uncles either served as police officers or served in the military. People assume that because we're trying to stop gun violence that we don't actually understand firearms, we don't understand gun ownership in this country. Gun ownership is incredibly ingrained in our culture as Americans, and the misconceptions around gun ownership allow for it to be as rampant as it is. There are 390 million guns out there in this country, and the arguments that we get along the lines of, oh, you don't have the First Amendment without the Second Amendment, when there are other countries out there with better First Amendments than we have and no Second Amendment. Every country has mentally ill people and violent video games and violent movies, but no other country has the gun violence that America has. So when we start talking about what actually causes gun violence and we bring it to that sort of understanding, even the people who show up to our rallies with 4 rifles with them agree that, oh, wait, that makes sense. I never heard that before, because they were consuming media from a salesperson, not an actual safety protocol person. No one pushing for policy that protected them. These are people trying to sell them more guns. When they talk about arming teachers, that's not a safety precaution. That is a sales pitch. Mm-hmm. And it's important to differentiate between the two, because we are not fighting the Constitution. We are fighting corruption. We are fighting the people in power that personally benefit from the perpetuation of violence.
So connect those dots between the money and the kind of voting drive that you've been doing.
It's one thing to register to vote. It's another thing to vote. And it's also another thing to actually know who you're voting for. Mm-hmm. It's just like that, educating not only yourself, but once you educate yourself, educating those around you. And coming from inner city communities like in Chicago, how our school is poorly resourced. Our youth, our students, our children don't have the proper education to know about voting anyway, to know about registering. Something needs to be done about that. If I can't vote for somebody who's going to save my community if I don't know what voting looks like. If I don't know that at the age of 16, 17, I can pre-register. If I don't know what day elections are because it's not taught to me. If I don't know that me voting cannot possibly save my life. These things need to be known and taught throughout the school, throughout just life in general, throughout the community.
Yeah, and we have to understand our reality. We have to understand what we're actually living in and experiencing right now. A large chunk of our elected officials spend more money on voter suppression than voter outreach. There are states that are constantly working to suppress the vote, to not allow people who are eligible to vote actually go out there and vote. There's a reason that Election Day is on a Tuesday and not a more accessible day. It's a Chris Rock joke that no one throws a party on a Tuesday, right? Because, why would you ever throw a party on a Tuesday? And so that's the whole idea, is that they don't want us to actually participate in the system because they benefit from it. We want to create an educated, young voting force because the young people are more intelligent now than ever before. And so I don't remember a time before the internet because I wasn't alive before the internet. And so when we are born into this guerrilla warfare, right, online, that has been used so much to manipulate the way that we think and feel, and we actually know how to cut through the bullshit, we're the ones who can actually figure out how to deal with this reality.
I was reading that you've probably done more town halls in different places of the country now than some Congress people.
In total, on the Road to Change tour, actually both tours, we've had over 50 town halls in 2 months. Meanwhile, 150 members of Congress have not held a town hall in their district for over 2 years.
When we are going community to community and we're speaking to people who suffer from day-to-day gun violence, and we ask, when was the last time a congressman came here? When was the last time a governor came here? When was the last time a mayor came here? And they don't have an answer because they don't remember a time when that happened. That's messed up. These people work for us. We do not work for them. Our tax dollars go to them because they work for us, and we need to keep them accountable. And so by creating this young, educated voting force, we're creating a generation that will keep this country in check.
When you look at your tour from a 30,000 feet view with the midterms in mind, it strikes me that there are some interesting sort of overlaps. I was just looking through. Well, you were in 4 stops in Minnesota. Minnesota's going to be really important to the House.
I can speak on that.
There was 3 stops in Wisconsin. Of course, Scott Walker.
We're huge Wisconsin people. We love Wisconsin.
So I'm curious, how much are you deliberately mapping this to the midterms? I see you rubbing your hands here in the studio. Or is it something, because the question really at heart is, I guess, how much from the outside are people seeing this as partisan and wanting to elect Democrats versus Republicans? It's a question I have to ask.
No, it's not partisan. And a reason we went to Minnesota, too, is because there is a few, high-level Democrats that do take a lot of money from the NRA. So we targeted areas with corrupt politicians, and I know that's why we went to 25 states, because there's a lot of areas with corrupt politicians. But we did specifically target areas with low youth turnout in elections that could be taken away from these corrupt politicians, and places that suffer from either day-to-day gun violence or mass shootings. We did go to Minnesota and Wisconsin because the youth turnout is abysmally low. And that is a huge reason why they have so many of these terrible politicians, because if young people are not engaged, when young people have the access to most of the information, that is why these people continue to get power. And in Wisconsin, we've seen the youth registration spike. In Minnesota, we've seen the youth registration spike. And I promise you, this is all strategic, because if the young people turn out in these states, they get to pick the governor, they pick the congressman, they pick the mayors, they pick the school board, they pick the city council, they pick the DA. They get to pick every single level of their government simply by showing out at a rate above the rate that they've been showing out at.
About 1 in 5 young people turn out to vote. And so we're pushing to make that 2 out of 5 or 3 out of 5. Because like you said, young people will be able to pick every single local leader if they actually show up to vote.
Yeah, we got a trend election day. That's what has to happen. The youth, bringing out the youth. We know how to get the youth out there. I know come election day, I'll be rolling around with a speaker, playing full of music. Bring out some cards, some games. We have to make it enjoyable for the youth, and also let them know this is you protecting yourself and your community by voting for these people that's supposed to help us.
We use our technology skills, our social media platforms, our merch to actually make voting cool. Like our shirts that we're wearing actually have QR codes, and if you scan them, it registers you to vote in under 2 minutes.
When we boil down what has changed in this country since we began this work and started forming these coalitions, not only from Parkland but around the country, saving one life is a major win. And something like a red flag law that has been passed, I believe, in 8 states since Parkland. We've seen 55 plus state laws passed and over a few hundred local ordinances passed in regards to gun laws. And so every single one of these policies, regardless if it is in a community that we've never even heard of or in a community that we're really close to, those are incredible wins in this country because every single law that is passed has been an upward battle in the past, and it's going to continue to be an upward battle unless we can continue to come together the way that we have. I think if we don't have universal background checks in the next 6 months, our country has absolutely failed us as people. Because when 97% of people want universal background checks and apple pie polls at 96% with people, universal background checks are more American than apple pie. And it's important to realize things like that because we don't agree on anything as much as we agree on that. It could be 100 degrees outside and it still wouldn't pull at 97% of people thinking it's hot outside. That's just a reality that we live in. And so if something like universal background checks cannot be passed, then our Congress is not representing us in the slightest, and corruption continues to win. Even the most staunch conservative agrees with almost every single one of our policies. We agree that we need stricter gun laws in this country, and we need to actually build a Center for Disease Control that can actually study this issue and an ATF that can actually do their job.
How can listeners listening to this help?
The most important thing, actually, is probably to educate yourself and others. I mean, I often get the same question from, like, 10-year-old girls, and they're like, I'm 10, I can't do anything. I'm like, yes, you can. You can do research and educate your mom, your dad, your brothers, your sisters, your friends, and so there's nothing that's stopping you. There's no age limit on civic engagement. I mean, over the course of this tour, we've mobilized so many more people. You know, we thought we had enough people on March 24th, but no, we've added people. This movement has only gained more momentum since then, and it's going to continue to gain momentum, especially when midterms come closer. And so we're going to be continuing to travel to different communities in the fall and try to reach the hubs of young people, colleges, other schools, community centers. And trust me, we're just going to be making more and more connections. And working with people that do this work because they feel like they want to, not that they need to.
And I also ask people, the lovely listeners of Mother Jones, to look at the people within their community doing this work. Because everywhere around the country, there are gun violence prevention groups that are mobilizing people in the same way we are. The difference is we're right now in Mother Jones' studio, but there are people in your community preventing gun violence that are working together, young people, old people, middle-aged people, coming together to actively save lives. And so we may not be in your town today, and we may not be it tomorrow, we might be in the future, but I guarantee you there's someone there doing this work that is equally a hero.
Jaclyn Corin, Matt Deitsch, Alex King, thanks so much for your honesty and for talking to us today. It's been a real treat for us, and good luck with everything that's next.
Thank you.